very good afternoon. Uh, may I add a couple of points to the introduction and of the restoration of the building that was given. I don't know where Sharad Babu is, but I am proud to be here today, not just because this is one of the great success stories of restoration of the city of Hyderabad, but also because when it all started, I was involved in the process in a very minor role. For some reason, World Monument Fund thought that I would be the right person to liaise between WMF and Osmania University. So they created a post of director and I was named the first director. Not much restoration was done when I was here, but then we did the documentation, we identified the problems, we did the emergency interventions, and that was the beginning. And this is not the end, because this is just the Darbar Hall that you see restored. The swings are still there, a lot of work is to be done, but then this is a great beginning. It's also a privilege because I think since birth I've been familiar with this building. My mother was on the staff when the Women's College moved from the rented buildings in Nampally to this permanent location in 1950. So I've been here as a child, I've been here throughout till she was working here, and of course after that too, because a lot of her colleagues happen to teach here. I thank Bleach India Foundation for this opportunity, especially the chairperson, Dr. Tejaswini, and the CEO, my dear friend, Sivanari Reddy Sab. We are, I was supposed to talk about something related to Hyderabad. That's what Nagi Reddy Sab told me. And I thought, what should I speak about? Because it's a white canvas. So eventually I decided I'll speak a little about the major aspects of the canvas of culture. I have just been warned by my elder brother Rasadullah Pasha that I better have some Urdu also in my talk. I told him that it is inevitable, because you cannot speak about Hyderabad and its culture without speaking something or quoting something in Urdu. Urdu of Hyderabad is different. Today we generally pass it off as Deccani, but it is not Deccani. The old Deccani is long gone. It is, morphed into what I prefer to call as Hyderabadi. It's not pure Deccani, it's a mix of Deccani and new terminology brought in by the Mughals after the fall of Golconda and Bijapur, and of course the Nizam's rule. So the language that is spoken in Hyderabad today is again a synthesized version of the old Deccani that was spoken here and of the Urdu, the more Persianized form which became popular in Delhi and North India. So what is it about Hyderabad that attracts so many people? That a quatrain of a very famous poet who lived in Hyderabad during his formative years and then went back to North India from where his family had come. And please, when I quote Urdu or Deccani or Hindi, whatever you may call it, if you have any problem, just raise your hand, I'll translate it. But I think as Jagat Guru Ibrahim has said, Bhasha Nyari Nyari, Bhava Ek, so the emotion is the same, whatever the language that is used. So Zubair Rizvi said, Kahat Musafir Uttar ka, जो शहरों शहरों घूमा, दिल्ली देखी, बंबई देखी, कलकत्ता भी देखा, विंध्याचल की गोद में लेकिन दक्कन शहर कैसा, जो आया एक बार यहाँ फिर अपने देश न लौटा. So this has been a fact about Hyderabad and often lamented by those who are from Hyderabad, because it takes one generation for people to settle here and become Hyderabadis and claim to be the original Hyderabadis and resent anyone who comes after them. आप किसी से पूछिए, बोलते हैं बी कालम देखने आ गए रह गए, नुमाइश देखने आ गए रह गए, गणेश का जुलूस देखने आए थे रह गए, जा रहे नहीं यहाँ से. And I think someone went to the extent of saying कि खराबी हैदराबाद में नहीं है, गंडीपेट के पानी में है, जो पीता है यहीं टिक जाता. Anyhow, bleach की बात हो रही थी. पहले खैर अंग्रेजी मेरी कमजोर है तो मैं समझा नहीं bleach क्या चीज होती, फिर देखा तो पता चला कि it is interweaving. फिर बाद में मालूम हुआ कि मंडवे को कहते हैं. तो मंडवा is celebrated in Hyderabad's poetry and culture. और मखदूम, the great poet of Hyderabad, has said, एक चमेली के मंडवे तले दो बदन प्यार की आग में जल गए, मैं कदे से जरा दूर उस मोड़ पर. तो चलिए मैं कदे से जरा दूर उस मोड़ पर जाते हैं और देखते हैं कि ये क्या चीज है गंगा जमनी तहजीब. What is this गंगा जमनी तहजीब which people talk about? Most of us have also, I think, relegated to a recess of our mind what constitutes Hyderabad's culture. So let's just have a look at some of the aspects of culture. Next, please. Cultural markers. And there are certain things which define our culture and our heritage. And thank you. Architecture, of course, is the most. Thank you. Architecture is the most immediately apparent manifestation of our past. It's all around us. आप कहीं भी जाइए रास्ते में आपको कुछ न कुछ नजर आ जाता है. There are other art forms which are a little more difficult to see and contemplate about, but they are all around you. Painting, sculpture, music, dance, and of course cuisine. आज किसी को पूछिए हैदराबाद तो पहले बिरयानी और हलीम, उससे आगे कोई सोचता ही नहीं है. Then of course there is language. As I told you, Hyderabadi we speak today, but there's a whole history of how a language evolved here. A language which was called Deccani, which is still called Deccani, which was a synthesis of the languages of the people of the two dominant cultures who were active in this region. There was Persian and there was Sanskrit. And I think the Deccani poet Sanati has put it very aptly when he says, what defines Deccani? And he says that this is a perfect language for everyone to understand, because he says, Rakhiya kam Sanskrit ke isme bol, अधिक बोलने से रखिया हूं अमोल, जिसे फारसी का ना कुछ ज्ञान है, सो दक्कनी ज़बान उसको आसान है. That is why this language came into being for communication. And Deccani is the only language in India, and I think one of the few languages in the world where the literature is in the language of the times and the language of the masses. Very deliberately, the poets here use the language of the masses. They scoured the markets, the marketplace, common people, to find out the terms, idioms, similes, metaphors that were used by these people. And the pronunciations, that is the greatness of Deccani. Most of the things are pronounced differently in Hyderabad. You know, North Indians always point out, खाफ और खे मुझे आज तक पता नहीं चला कि वो गलती क्या है उसमें. So we are proud of that. And Deccani poets used it as it was pronounced, even if it was wrong. Hati is hatti for us, it's never hati, and there are so many words. वो पूरा लिस्ट करूं तो बहुत टाइम लग जाएगा. Yeah, I think this is a perfect synthesis in architecture. Yeah, I'm sure most of you would be familiar with this structure. You are archaeology people, not archaeology people and not Anuradha, because we have a distinct advantage. Toli Masjid. A perfect synthesis, because I think the embellishment here, the stucco work, takes inspiration for local jewelry. आज भी जो कड़े पहनते हैं, जो whatever jewelry you find, your necklaces, the padaks of the malas, everything you find, carved in stucco here at the Toli Mosque. Next, please. So this is the Toli Masjid. It's at Kulsumpura. If you haven't not seen it, I think you should positively go and see it. Let me come to this whole process of synthesis, which began in India right from the first settlement of Turco-Persians in Delhi. And the greatest exponent of that is this person here, Amir Khusro. And we find that by the time of Khusro, Indianness had become part and parcel of the identity of the people of the Sultanate. Turke Hindustaniyam, Man Hindavi Goyam Jue Ab, Shakkare Misri Nadaram, Kasarab Goyam Sukhan. I've given the translation there. So, and of course, I think he was very proud. He called himself the parrot of India, Tutiye Hindam. And he says, why someone may ask me, all this zeal and admiration for India, it is because India is the land of my birth and is my own country. The Prophet has said that the love of one's country is part of faith. As it is my country, I'm going to speak about it within the limits that I have set for myself. And if you look at Zuhratul Kamal and other works of Khusro, they are full of praises of India, from the flora, fauna, from the people, from the customs, any subject about India, and he starts off. That is what was happening in Delhi. Of course, Khusro, this is not just a superficial sense of belonging. It was very deep-rooted. The culture, the local culture had been absorbed by the people of the Sultanate. And that is what they brought to the Deccan. And that process continued in the Deccan. I will share just two pieces of poetry of Khusro, which will give you, the feel and sense of how deep-rooted the sense of belonging was to India and to the culture of India. Next, please. Kaga saptan khaiyo, chun chun khaiyo maas, do naina mat khaiyo, inme piya milan ki aas. This emotion cannot be understood anywhere else, especially in the West. I teach students, American students, and when I translate this, they said, this is morbid, this is, how can this be poetry? But then the beauty of that lies in the Indian tradition and custom, कि आप ये सोच रहे हैं कि पूरा तन चुन चुन के खा ले, ओ kaga, O crow, eat my entire body, pick each morsel of flesh of my bones, but do leave the two eyes alone, because for them in rest the longing to meet the beloved or see the beloved. तो ये जो है सिर्फ हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं. दूसरा जो है, again about customs, Indian custom, how the people who had settled here were also following the same custom. This is a complaint of a girl to her regarding what is happening in her life after her marriage. The father has given everything in dowry, but then the in-laws always find a reason to point out deficiencies. Sona bhi deena, rupa bhi deena, dini jarat jadao. Ek न दीनी सरकोरे कंगी सास ननन मारे बोल अरे लखिया बाबुल मोरे काहे को ब्याही विदेश. Can there be anything more Indian than this? Next, please. And just one, yeah. Otherwise, you go ahead. Just a single touch. Enough, enough. So what happened in that event when the Sultanate people came here and settled here? The first thing that happened that triggered a change in the perception, concepts, was the revolt of the Amiran-e-Sada against Delhi. So you have an independent state emerging in the Deccan. Those are the grandees of Sultanate court in the Deccan. They have revolted against the Tughlaqs and they elect one among them. Elect, mind you, again, that is an important thing because people are often surprised as how people of Hyderabad, even ordinary Nawabs and administrators could look the Nizam in his eye and put their foot down and say, no sir, this is wrong. Of course, they said it very politely. But they could do that. That could not happen in other parts of India. That was because of this tradition that had started here when the first Bahmani emperor was elected by the nobles. So he was not someone who used might to come to power, but he was elected. The nobility elected him. In 1390, we have another change where the Sufi influence, especially Chishti influence, increases in the Deccan with the arrival of Khaja Banja Nawaz in Gulbarga. And of course, that triggers again, that gives a boost to the language of Deccani, and of course, also to increased interchanges, exchanges, interactions in the masses. And then, of course, Feroz Shah's marriage to the daughter of Devaraya I, that triggers a chain of events which has a very strong cultural impact on the Bahmani court. It is said that after this event, the whole concept of the Sultan changed, both for the Bahmanis and for the Vijayanagara emperors. And you have the terminology going in Vijayanagara, you have the mode of greeting the Vijayanagara emperor as Salama. You have all sorts of dress changes in dress. You have 100,000 Arabs guarding the persona of the Vijayanagara monarch. So you have a lot of exchanges and influences, cross influences coming in. The final thing that happened, which gave a major boost to interfaith relations in the Deccan, was the shift of capital of Gulbarga, from Gulbarga to Bidar, and that was under Ahmad Shah Wali Bahmani, who is revered as a saint by both Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus address him as Allama Prabhu, and a reincarnation of the Tatriya, and for Muslims he is Al-Wali. Next, please. This is an old photograph of the Lingayat chief who visits the Dargah of Ahmad Shah Wali annually on the Urs Day. For 5 days he stays there, camps in front of the Dargah and performs Aarti and all ceremonies along with the Mutawalli. Now there you see him dressed as in a syncretic manner which developed here. I'll talk about it a little later, but this is what happens there. It still happens today. Even today, if you go to Bidar on the Urs, you'll see all these things happening. And if you happen to be in Bidar on Amavas, please do visit the tomb of Ahmad Shah Wali. The full day there is an Aarti going on, there's a Pandit sitting there, and two things are going on parallelly. On one side you have this priest performing arti and distributing prasad, and beside him there is this mutawalli sitting and reciting the Fatiha. Extraordinary sight now, but it was very common in old Hyderabad and old Deccan. Next, please. Now, this is, universal garbing of the divine that had happened in Bahmani period. But it continued through the ages, and you find Ibrahim Adil Shah, the second of Bijapur, who was more commonly referred to as Jagat Guru in Karnataka areas. He is the author of Kitab-e-Noras, a treatise on Indian music. He set up a city of Noraspur where music and dance were the focus. Noraspur ruins still survive. The Noras festival was revived, but I don't know whether it's still going on. It is an annual event at Bijapur. He invokes Ganesh, Lord Ganesh, and goddess Saraswati at the beginning of his Noras Nama or Kitab-e-Noras. And those are the words. I have the translations too there for you. And the one below is about language and how music and song do not rely primarily on language, but it is how you convey the emotions, and that is what happens. Bhasha nihari nihari bhava ek, kaha Turk or kaha Brahman. Be it a Hindu or a Muslim, that is what is implied here. With different languages, emotions are what matter, not the language that is spoken. Next, please. Now, Deccani synthesis did not happen over a few years or a few decades. It's a long, drawn-out process. It happened over centuries, slow absorption, exchanges. And we have interactions which led to exchanges, resulting in borrowings. And these borrowings were amalgamated into distinct culture. They took distinct tangible forms till eventually they were manifest in something which you could feel, which you could see, both tangible and intangible. And that was a slow, drawn-out process, long drawn-out process. And eventually there emerged a readily identifiable culture for the Deccan. It was nothing like anything anywhere else in the world. And the most important thing was a profound sense of belonging that was there among the people. And from being a sense of belonging for the Deccan, entire Deccan, it later evolved into a sub-regional sense of belonging and identity. And the best example of that comes from the court poet, the poet laureate of Golconda, Waji, who says, "Deccan sa nahi thar sansar med." The translation is there for you to see. "Deccan sa nahi thar sansar mein, punaj fazal aanka hai is thar mein. Deccan hai nagina, angoti hai jag, angoti ko hurmat, nagina hai lag. Deccan mulk khan, dhan ajab saaj hai, कि सब मुल्क सर और दक्कन ताज है." And then he comes to the punchline and says, "दक्कन कन बहुत ही खासा है, तेलंगाना इसका खुलासा है." So that is where the sub-regional assertion of identity and the pride in the identity of being from Telangana comes in. And we'll look at a few manifestations next. One of the most popular and most, I think, continuously occurring events annually for the past 4 centuries, at least more than 4 centuries in the founding of Hyderabad, is the Bika Alam procession. Now this is again unique, which is developed in the Deccan and which continues to this day. And the point is, people of present day Hyderabad, especially who belong to the new city, are kahan jana udhar garbad mein, you have to park your vehicle on this side of the bridge and go across. But please do take the effort and visit the old city during Muharram. Because even today, what happens is, you have the procession of Bika Alam, the hereditary Mujawir, the caretaker. He sits on the elephant. That is him. He passed away. Now his son is sitting. This is Arif Bhai, who passed away a couple of years back. And then you have a whole entourage. People carrying the Mahi Paratip, the umbrellas, the standards. I think there are 12 Kshatri Bardas, 8 minor Alam Bardas. All of them are Hindus. And they have been doing that for the past more than 400 years. Actually, I think I was told that the number of Kshatri Bardas and Alam Bardas had increased because there were disputes within the family as to who should have the right to continue. These are, the honors they feel which are inherited through generations. So you still have those three. And there was, at least I have not been there for the Bika Alam procession as such for the past couple of decades. But till I was there was this very interesting ritual that happened. After the Alam reaches Chadarghat, Masjid-e-Ilahi and Sailane ke baad, when the elephant returns to the Ashur Khana, the local ladies of the locality are waiting there to receive the elephant, and they actually wash its feet in gratitude. And all these, things are slowly dying out. But they were, and most of them are still part of our culture. Next, please. Well, it was not just the city, but also the entire Telangana and also parts of Andhra, for which this 10-day period at least, if not the 40 days of mourning, were very common. And you had, even in a few decades back, we had an acute shortage of labor in Hyderabad whenever Muharram time came, because all the workers used to return to their villages because for the Pirala Panduga, Pedala Panduga, and everyone used to rush back to their own villages. And for 10 days, all these people were in attendance at the Ashur Khana Alawa of their particular villages. They felt it was part of their existence that they have to be there. Even today, I think in Nandinagar, you have this, tribals have their own customs of Muharram. You have this Lambada community there, Srinivas, next to you. In the ground there of Nandinagar, you have this fire walk. I'm sure you must have been there. So those traditions still continue. They're very strong. Recent times, you must have read a lot of work on Hyderabad by foreign scholars. For some reason, most of them, Americans mostly, are focused on working on Shiism in Hyderabad. मेरे को समझ में नहीं आई बात, अगर ये क्या चक्कर है? What is the reason behind it? Everyone is after Shiism. Hyderabad, Shias were involved in it, but Sunnis were equally involved in all the Muharram rituals. And interestingly, not a single Ashur Khana Alawa of the Deccan in this region, Telangana region, not one of them had a Shia as a Mutawalli, except later in Irani Gali. That was the first. Mujawirs, of course, you have Muswi in Bashai Shurana, but he's a Mujawir. He's not the Mutawalli. The Mutawalli is still the Nizam there. all the mutawallis of Ashur Khanas in Hyderabad and the Telangana area, none of them were Shia. And yet, there is this, I don't know, newfound zeal for Shiism among among Americans, who have continuously been writing about the differences between Shias and Sunnis. I don't know what the game plan, what the agenda is, but I have not found that among the people of Hyderabad as yet. Thankfully, we are safe. And this rural celebrations or observations of Muharram have led to also enrich the language too. I came across very strange terminology in the Telugu language. A very thin, lean person is called Pirala Katta. Yeah? Yes. And there's a saying, Deccani saying, कि ऊद जलता नहीं, अलम उठता नहीं. And that is also there in Telugu. Udu galadu, piruled. So these are, what is happening. If someone was asking me, was there really, because there's been this, foreign scholars have always been a little, suspicious of their intentions. Not all of us, even the very honest and very, क्या कहेंगे, real scholarship that has come. Karen Leonard, for example, has for long been stating, had for some long been stating, that in culture of Hyderabad, actually there was no synthesis. It was coexistence at best. But then I gave her a lot of examples. We had a lot of discussions, and in the end, when I actually had quoted her and presented my counter argument, and she said, no, I've changed my opinion regarding that. And that is what I'm trying to show you here, that this is a site which very few have mentioned. Unfortunately, the writings on Hyderabad, the culture, the people has mainly been in Urdu. And it has been my endeavor to bring that to English so that more people know about it. Not many people are learning Urdu now and speaking Urdu now or comprehending Urdu now as it should be done. Next, please. Now, this was not just a procession or a ritual happening annually where people had a great time, good time, or it was, an apotheosis of shared grief that was shared by, all across all religions and sects. But this went lot deeper into the psyche of the people, and there was this coalescence of mystic thought. For the first time, Sajjad Shahid Ali Allah of Bijapur, one of a family of three great true Sufis, poets and writers from Bijapur, he accepted this Indian mystic theory of 5 elements. Otherwise, it was only 4 elements, Abu Atish, Khakobad, that is, 4 primary elements which make up all material in the world. Then, of course, Greek philosophy had progressed beyond that, but Islamic mystic philosophy remained firmly rooted in the belief that it was only 4 elements. The concept of the void, shunya, which had been incorporated in the Hellenistic philosophy of matter, was not taken up or absorbed or taken in by the Sufi philosophers. They continued to base their analysis of matter on only 4 basic elements. Now, this concept of the 4th element of shunya appealed to Aminuddin Ala because that signified purity. Nothingness, also vacuum is also purity, which cannot be stained, which cannot be, tainted. So that concept appealed to him and he started. And of course, the whole philosophy that grew out of that is today known as the Falsafe-e-Aminiya, 5 anasir 25 gun, 5 elements and 25 attributes of those. That is widely now accepted by the Sufis in defining matter and such other things. There was also this acceptance of or influence, the absorption of the influence of Krishna Bhakti by the Sufis. Now, as you all know, I need not elaborate on that. Krishna Bhakti, Lord Krishna is the sole masculine. Every devoted individual, it doesn't matter whether you are a male or you female, you consider yourself as a gopi of the Lord. So it is also considered proper to, when you address the Lord, be it male or female, to use the feminine voice. And this tradition had already started coming in Khusro's time, but in the Deccan that found a far greater appeal. And even the first ghazal of Deccani that we find till today, about dates from 1410, Lutfi, that is, the expression there is, in that ghazal, the first ghazal of Deccani is a rekhti ghazal. Rekhti meaning voiced in the feminine voice. If I remember correctly, just a couple of Hasad Bhai ke liye. खिलवत मने सजन के मैं मोम की बत्ती हूँ, एक पाँव पर खड़ी हूँ, जलने पिरत पति हूँ, जलती को ना जलाओ, तजने को आग लाओ, बूझूं तो फिर जलाओ, नायक रति रति हूँ. फना का कॉन्सेप्ट है of annihilation of the self in the path of love. Next please. रोकना पड़ता, वरना एक बार शुरू हो गया फिर मैं Now, both the Bhakti and Sufi movements were based on the fact that God was supreme and all humans were equal for him. There was also the shared belief that devotion to God was the way to achieve salvation. Rahe Mohabbat, Rahe Ulfat. There's a lot, there are books, volumes written on this love for the divine. इश्क़ हक़ीक़ी जिसे कहते हैं आप, इश्क़ मजाक़ी तो आपने हमने जो की है वो, मगर ये इश्क़ हक़ीक़ी की बातें हैं. इसमें love for the divine, and that takes a very strange form where annihilation and erasure of your identity are the supreme goal. जी हक़ की बात हो रही, तो जब हक़ ही रह जाता है तो that is, and it's not difficult. I didn't understand this from the books that I later read. I had understood it long before from a filmy song. So you find it all around you. It just, you have to pay attention. I don't know, the younger generation might not have heard it, but there is this famous Qawwali, बरसात की रात. इश्क़ हक़ीक़ी और इश्क़ मजाजी दोनों का supreme explanation I found in that one Qawwali. I hope you remember. ये इश्क़ इश्क़ है, इश्क़ इश्क़. आखिरी बंद अगर आपको याद है तो वो इश्क़ हक़ीक़ी, the devotion for the divine, उससे बेहतर साहिर उद्यानवी ने लिखा है. कहते हैं कि कम्युनिस्ट था, उसे क्या पता खुदा क्या है और मोहब्बत क्या है तो पता था, मगर ये सुन लीजिए, आपको ये समझ में आ जाएगा कि उसे खुदा भी पता था और मोहब्बत करना भी आता था और मोहब्बत का मतलब भी उससे वो भी खूब वाकिफ था. वैसे मोहब्बत के मतलब से वाकिफकार तो बहुत बैठे हैं यहाँ. आखिरी बंद सुनिए. अल्लाह और रसूल का फरमान इश्क है. ये कव्वाली है, फिल्म में बाद में जाके सुन लीजिए. अल्लाह और रसूल का फरमान इश्क है, यानी हदीस इश्क है, कुरान इश्क है. गौतम और मसीह का फरमान इश्क है. ये कायनात जिस्म है और जान इश्क है. इश्क सरमद, इश्क ही मंसूर है. इश्क मूसा, इश्क कोहे तूर है. खाक को बुत और बुत को देवता करता है इश्क. खाक को बुत, मट्टी को देवता बनाता है और देवता जिसे पूछते हैं फिर, खाक को बुत और बुत को देवता करता है इश्क, इंतहा यह है कि बंदे को खुदा करता है इश्क. दैट इज दैट इज टोटली फना फिल्ला, कि आप खत्म हो गए अपनी हस्ती, आइडेंटिटी, एवरीथिंग यू फिनिश एंड यू रीच अ स्टेज वेयर नथिंग रिमेन्स एक्सेप्ट गॉड. यही चीज आप इन दोनों हस्तियों की जबान में सुनिए. अल्लामा प्रभु कहते हैं, with mind given rest from its usual toil, for him who has merged his own self with the Lord, all thoughts of attainment his knowledge be spoiled, himself into self having joined with great yoke, for him there's no dual, no unity broke. ये अल्लामा प्रभु कहते हैं. नीचे ये पढ़ लीजिए आप अंग्रेजी में, ये सुदरास जो कहते हैं, द सूफी ऑफ गुलबर्गा, उसका जो है मैं आपको दखनी का सुना देता हूं अगर इजाजत हो तो. पानी में नमक डाल बसा देखना उसे, जब घुल गया नमक तो नमक बोलना किसे. पानी में नमक डाल बसा देखना उसे, जब घुल गया नमक तो नमक बोलना किसे. यूं खोए खुदी अपनी खुदा साथ मुस्तफा, जब घुल गई खुदी तो खुदा बिन कोई न दिसे. There's nothing but God that remains. And I've highlighted the lines which are identical. Next, please. Wahdatul Wujud, Asad Bhai was mentioning this, the universality of being. Wahdat har cheez mein hai. If you don't believe this, then according to Sufi philosophy, you cannot be a true believer. हर चीज में खुदा है. The Sufi from Deccan, one of the last great Sufi poets of the Deccan, Qazi Mahmud Bahri says, अहे रूप तेरा रत्ती रत्ती है, पर्वत पर्वत पत्ती पत्ती है, पर्वत में अधिक न कम पत्ती में, इकसां रहे रास और रत्ती में. And the translation is there. Omnipresence of God, God being everywhere. Next, please. अब ये एक गजल के कुछ लाइंस हैं, सुनिए. On the same thing, this is relatively present Hyderabad, beginning of the 20th century. जिधर मैं देखता हूं उस तरफ ए जाने जा तू है, हरी में दिल में साकिन है, मकीने लामकां तू है. Translation is coming below. Next, please. ब्रह्मन दैर को जाए न जाए शेख काबे को, आया उन पर जो हो जाए कि हर दिल में निहात हुए. नेक्स्ट. शजर में तू हजर में तू तेरा जलवा नुमाया है, गुलों में तेरी खुशबू है, नसीम में बूस्तां तू है. टोटली सूफियाना रंग, and I think one of the best example of devotional poetry produced by Hyderabadis. Anyone has any idea who this chap might be? You keep quiet, Anu. The hint is that it is one of her relatives, ancestors. Next, please. Raja Rajeshwar Rao Asghar, the Raja of Domkunda Samastan. और गजल लंबी है, 13 अशआर की है, मैं पूरी नहीं पढ़ा. एक एक शेर उसमें सुनने और समझने से ताल्लुक रखता है सब. Raja Saab, you know, Hyderabad always comes up with surprises. You had Iranians coming in, you had North Indians coming in, they were all said, we are the masters of language. Persian तो हमको जानते, कायस्थ आए कि हम तो भाई खानदानी कायस्थ हैं, हम तो हमारा तो फारसी तो हमारी जबान है. How will the people of the Deccan know anything about it? And you know who produced the maximum number of dictionaries in Persian, Urdu, Hindi? Raja Rajeshwar Rao. 60. 60 dictionaries. The final work, unfortunately, was not published. It is, I think, on more than 55 volumes. Presently, it is there in the University of Karachi because the family, unfortunately, didn't find it fit to preserve them and they sold it off. Someone purchased it and took it to Pakistan. Still there, unpublished in the University of Pakistan. And also, surprisingly, even today, at least 3 or 4 of his writings are in publication there. हमारे इंटैक के मेंबर थे उमापति साहब, उनको मैंने एक मेरे पास जो नुस्खा रहा एक presented to him, said, no, keep it with you. No one in our family knows the value of this. I held it on and just recently I passed it on to his son, Anil, who has done a painstaking job of restoring the Domukunda fort. Of course, the most beautiful building there for me is Asghar Manzil, the palace constructed. ऊपर आप देखेंगे उर्दू में लिखा हुआ असगर मंजिल. तो ये हैदराबाद है. This is what Deccan is. This is what the culture of the Deccan is. The greatest scholar of Persian that Hyderabad has produced is a Telugu Bidda. Nothing, no connection with Iran, no connection with Kayas, no connection with North India. Next, please. ये जो synthesis हुआ, my challenge to Raghubhai for your attention, कि this is beyond coexistence. Language बदल गई. And Kishan Bhakti के जो impact on यहाँ के culture पे, Sufism पे, produced this type of poetry. Burhanuddin Janam, referring to Allah as Sham. यूं तो शाम सलोना तू मेरा रे, ना चले तुझ पर मस्तर लोना रे, जो कोई चाहे फानी होना रे, आ कहे जानम जाने फानी रे, जान की आज है मेहमानी रे. This is about annihilation of the self, the ego, your personality, and merger with God. This is how he puts it. And here he has no hesitation in referring to Allah as Sham. Next. Qazi Mahmud Bahri, a little later, 1670, he says, लाल है मेहंदी का रंग नहीं ये हरी, यूं है हरी राम की कारीगरी. आपको जो चीज दिखती है जरूरी नहीं है हमेशा वो हो. What is the essence that is more important? He compares it to henna. The leaf is green. When you make a paste, it's green. When you put it on your hand, still remains green. When you dust it off, what falls off is green. But what is the true essence? लाल है मेहंदी का रंग नहीं है हरी, यूं है हरी राम की कारीगरी. तो श्याम से हरी राम. Next. A beautiful Tumri. This is more contemporary. 1960s. Abdul Qadir Siddiqui Hasrat. Most of you who have been to Khawalis will have heard at least a few of his companies. One of the most popular Sufi poets of Hyderabad, contemporary times. Every Khawal sings it. Sun le araj muri Ram re, sud bisra gayo Ram re, tirchi najariya se, mari katariya, le gayo sukh aram re. These are all not ordinary people. They are highly codified people. Burhanuddin Janam is the father of Aminuddin Ala, and Aminuddin Ala had about 60 Khalifas who spread all over the Deccan with his philosophy. Qazi Mahmud Bahri, as the name suggests, is a Qazi, a judge. So he knows his religion, he knows his Islam. And Abdul Qadir Siddiqui Hazrat, a Sufi poet, but he was the founder professor of the Department of Theology, Osmania University. Now, a professor of theology अगर ये कह रहे हैं तो कुछ बात होगी उसमें, समझो, सुनो. क्या कह रहे हैं? सुन ले रज मोरी राम रे. लंबी है, एक और बंद है. ख़वातीन के लिए ज़्यादा अहम है. I had it performed at Domkunda recently. Purva Guru sang it, and there was this one stanza. वहाँ जो कलेक्टर साहब थी उनकी बीवी बैठी थी, वो सुन के उसको कोनी मार रही थी. तो वो जितनी देर वहाँ थे हम लोग, वो जोर जोर से अपने शौहर के कान में वही दोहराते रही. तो ये हमारे सूफी लोग जो है बहुत काम की बातें करते हैं. ख़वातीन के लिए भी सुनिए बंद क्या है. सास नंदिया बिगड़ी तो बिगड़ी, मोको तो से काम रे. तो ये हालांकि वहां बेचारे हसरत जो है उस पिया को कह रहे थे, और सास नंदिया दुनिया और दुनिया के लोगों को कह रहे थे, मगर वो मोहतरमा ने शुरू हो गए, सुन लिए मियाँ को. तो आपके लिए भी काम की चीजें मिल जाती हैं. एक वैसे तो वो कई हैं, मगर एक ये भी गाई है उन्होंने. आई रिकॉर्डेड इट ऑन माई ओन फोन. द ऑडियो क्वालिटी इज वेरी बैड, बट व्हाट इज आई वांट टू शेयर विथ यू अ स्मॉल cutting, not the entire thing, is a very famous Qawwali, Kanaiya, composed by Nawab Jamaluddin Khan Sadr Jung Hilm of Hyderabad, of course. He died around 1920s. इन अजहर भाई, इनकी जो किताब है ठुमरियों की, उसका फॉरवर्ड आपके नाना साहब ने लिखा है. प्रीत की रीत. Please read it. It's a beautiful, beautiful introduction to the poetry of Hilm. It is performed by a Hyderabadi-born Qawwal who now is in Pakistan, Farid Ayaz. Please.
याद है कुछ भी हमारी कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी हमारी कन्हैया, याद है कुछ. अरे जरा बोलो कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी. जरा बोलो कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी हमारी. कहूँ क्या तेरे भूलने के मैं बारी, कहूँ क्या तेरे भूलने के मैं बारी. कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी हमारी. कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी हमारी. जरा बोलो रे कन्हैया, रे कन्हैया. अरे मारे कानू कन्हैया रे, अरे कन्हैया. ओ कन्हैया, मुझे याद है वो जरा जरा, मुझे याद है वो जरा जरा. तुम्हें याद हो के न याद हो, याद है कुछ भी हमारी कन्हैया, याद है कुछ भी हमारी. कहूँ क्या तेरे भूलने के मैं बारी, कहूँ क्या तेरे भूलने के.
Thank you. Zara, next. Another important thing about Deccani poetry, Deccani art forms, is that they are deeply connected to the region. The native associations are abundant. ये painting में जैसे आपको you see a peacock, you deer, everything here is Indian. That roots the narrative in the region, not just the region, but in the case of poetry in the Deccan, you are very clear that you are nowhere else but in the Deccan. And surprisingly, these are tales which have been brought in from, in certain instances at least, pure religious narratives from Arabia. वो तमीम अंसारी का किस्सा जो है वो पूरा बयान है. And during that narration, suddenly the poet finds ways and means of relating that to the Deccan, and ensuring that the response is a sense of belonging, of not something alien. I've always been critical of Ghalib for his choice of such references. Ghalib ने क्या कहा भाई, वो सब कहाँ कुछ लालो गुल में नुमाया हो गई. अब स्कूल में हमारे उस्ताद ने कहा, मैंने कहा बुड्ढा फेंक रहा. तो बोले, मैं बोला लाला गुल, बोले लाला इज अ ट्यूलिप. कभी श्रीनगर गए नहीं, कम से कम वहां तो जाना पड़ता है आपको लाला देखने. तो सब ख्याली है, imaginary, nothing where, and a person from Hyderabad would not in any way understand what lala is. So the mention in Deccani poetry is never lala. Rarely you might find one, but more often and almost invariably it is Gend, Keola, and the flora, fauna, everything from here, to the extent that even iconic love symbols, you won't find Shiri Farhad, Laila Majnu, you will find Nal Damayanti, क्या कहेंगे, Radha Kishan, Ram Sita, more often mentioned in Deccani poetry than the classic Shiri Farhad and Laila Majnu. So that is, what ensured that the people, the masses, related to what was being said. Next, please. Of course, there's been borrowings, there have been attempts at reinterpreting established icons. You have this, of all places, on the gate, Banjara Darwaza, you have it on the left. But I also found it in at least two places in the Dargah of Gesudaras in Gulbarga, on the spandrel of the ceremonial archway and on the Kashti. Yes, this is also a famous Kashti, वो तोते की खबर के बाजू है, इसमें वो लाल शक्कर रहती. Children who have a difficulty speaking, वहां से वो शक्कर ला के खिलाते हैं, क्योंकि तोता है, तोता बोलता है, तो तोते का वहां grave है, and beside the grave you have this kashti. Normally it is ceremoniously filled by people who have made a vow to do that on fulfillment of some wish. So you have numerous, we don't have time to go into many, I'm just giving. And of course that is a pure temple motive, the Gajasima motive. You find it in Orissa temples very commonly. But then there have been various interpretations, I won't go into that. But I find that it was reinterpreted, and that is my theory. I've been discussing it with my friend Mr. Umang here. We have not come to a conclusion as yet, so I have not really published it. But my own reading is that here the Sima transformed into Asad, Asadullah, Hazrat Ali, and the Gaja is the Ashab Fil. So it is the triumph of Hazrat Ali and Islam over the forces of Abraha. That is my own personal interpretation of what it might have meant to the Baimanis and later Adil Shahis, but Mr. Roman Kocher is still doubtful. He says he'll find me some other explanation. Next, please. This is a topic which I have spoken a lot about. I will not go into details. Just one element, that is construction methodologies, not just motives and elements or decorative features that were borrowed. Not just the form, but the synthesis was in technology used also. The two different systems, the arcuated system brought in by the Muslims, the arch, dynamic arch, and the static pillar and lintel construction, which was, a tradition here. Now, this is how it was done for the, I think this is the north portal, yes, north portal of Jama Masjid, Bijapur. The same schematic you find repeated in the Arts College of Usmania University, and also next, you find it at the Sitaram Bagh Temple Complex. A beautiful complex with a lot of very interesting features, especially the gateway. And of course, by early 20th century, Hyderabad had started working extensively on Ajanta and conservation, preservation, and documentation. Unfortunately, all that has been taken away by us. And the tragic part is even the person who was responsible for this excellent work is not even acknowledged, either in a building or a museum or a road, either in Telangana or in Maharashtra or in Karnataka. All three places he has done extensive work. Unfortunately, even our own archaeology department is named after a chief minister when it should have been named at least after Ghulam Izdani, the famous archaeologist of India, epigraphist archaeologist. But then he was working there, and people, because of the restoration and conservation and documentation work, paintings, Ajanta painting replicas were sold very commonly in Hyderabad, and people were introduced to the features, architectural features there, and you find the Chaitya window being used in buildings in Hyderabad as a portal here. So all these influences came in. Without hesitation, they took up and absorbed them into the repertoire of architecture and the cultural canvas. Next, please. Hyderabad और खाने की बात ना हो, मुश्किल है, it's very difficult, and Hyderabadi delicacies beyond biryani. I'm fed up with biryani halim. Everything everyone says is Hyderabad biryani halim. There's a lot more than biryani and halim. I come from a middle class family. It's been middle class for centuries. I don't know biryani halim is. ये तो पहले अब अमीरों की का डिश हो गई थी. In olden days, it was food of the army. A single dish which you could feed. You don't have to cook 10 things. Biryani and halim both were meant for the large gatherings, and that's why in Hyderabad most often biryani was on the menu, or the only item on the menu in weddings. You have to feed 200 guests, 300 guests. देर चढ़ा दो, काम खत्म हो गया. वो लवाजमात बाद में ऐड हुए उसमें, लुखमी, कबाब, मिर्ची, दही. My own iconic Hyderabadi dish, my personal, that is, people who is khatti dal, and that too I prefer it कच्ची इमली की खट्टी दाल काली हंडी में लकड़ी के चूल्हे पे पकी रहना. That is my definition of the perfect खट्टी दाल. Next, please. And there are a lot of other things. My personal favorites I've listed. आपके कुछ और होंगे. बगारे बगान अम्बाड़ा, अम्बाड़े की चटनी, अम्बाड़े की दाल, माट की भाजी, कुल्थी का कट, चाकना, माया खलिया, खट्टी कड़ी, अम्बोते की भाजी, चमकूरे के भजिए, जवारी की रोटी एक ही चीज है जो इसमें हार्ड है. मगर वन थिंग कॉमन यू विल फाइंड इज हर चीज में खट्टा है, एंड मोस्टली इमली. हैदराबादी जो है वो इमली के बगैर जिंदा नहीं रह सकता. फिर देयर इज अनदर peculiarity. Hyderabad goes crazy on mirag. There is a mad rush for maral. 100 रुपए की मच्छी 1000 रुपए में खरीद के लाके खाते. क्या मिलता नहीं मालूम. And of course Hyderabadi breakfast, नाहरी कुलचा. वो तो खैर होटल में खाते, घर पे बनाने का रिवाज कमी है, कभी कभी बन जाता है. कुलचा तो नहीं बनता, कुलचा तो आपको बाहर से लाना. और वैसे कुलचा ही नहीं मिल रहा है हैदराबाद में. मगर हैदराबाद में जो सबसे ज्यादा मशहूर नाश्ता है वो खिचड़ी खट्टा है. वो स्कूल की मीटिंग हो रही थी, हमारे श्यामराव साहब श्याम अंकल, उन्होंने सुबह सुबह की मीटिंग थी, मैं समझता हूँ, और कोई थे वहाँ, 3-4 हमारे यशवंत भाई भी थे शायद, वो कुछ रेस्टोरेशन की बात हो रही थी, अर्ली मॉर्निंग मीटिंग. नेचुरली इन स्कूल आफ्टर दैट मीटिंग और ड्यूरिंग दैट मीटिंग ब्रेकफास्ट, तो लाके कुछ रखे हुए सैंडविचेस और ये, तो हम तो खा लिए जो भी रखा था, खा रहे थे. श्याम अंकल बैठे थे यूं, अरे बोला अंकल लीजिए. बोले बोला क्या हुआ, ये खाते, नाश्ता है, नाश्ता करा था, बोल क्या बुलाया ना. ही वॉज एन ओल्ड स्टूडेंट ऑफ HPS, हैड लिव्ड इन द बोर्डिंग. अरे बोला फिर श्याम अंकल आपके जमाने में क्या था. हमारे जमाने में खिचड़ी, खट्टा, पापड़. तो हैदराबाद का नाश्ता, इवन पब्लिक स्कूल हैड दैट, आई बिलीव, आई डोंट नो. खिचड़ी के है 4 यार, खीमा, पापड़, घी, अचार. ये बाज लोगों के लिए, बाज लोग जो वेजिटेरियन हैं उनके लिए खीमा इज रिप्लेस्ड बाय खट्टा. खिचड़ी के है 4 यार, खट्टा, पापड़, घी, अचार. नहीं, दही नहीं है, दही नहीं खाते हमारे पास, नाश्ते में नहीं खाते कोई भी. हमारे पास दही जो आप कह रही हैं वो हमारे पास बगारा खट्टा कहते हैं उसे. तिल लगता है उसमें, उसको बगार के, तो वो खट्टा है वो. सही बोल रहा हूं साहब. बहरहाल वक्त बहुत हो गया है, मैं समझता हूँ ज्यादा बोल दिया मैं. नेक्स्ट खत्म कर देना चाहिए. हैदराबादी एक किस्म की चीज होती है. एक द फॉल ऑफ बीजापुर, बहुत ही तकलीफ में थे यहाँ दक्कन के लोग. जबान जो थी उसको पैट्रनेज नहीं था, पोएट्स भूखे मर रहे थे. मीरा हाशमी जो है, किसी ने रिकमेंड किया कि आप चले जाइए मद्रास, वहाँ का जो मुगल गवर्नर है वो जो है पोएट्स का पैट्रन है, प्लीज गो देयर, ट्राई योर लक देयर. Poor fellow landed up there and then, he wrote a poem in praise of that fellow. कुछ समझ में नहीं आया, कुछ highly Persianized language Mughals used. Hashmi को someone said कि change your diction, start using more Persian or start using the northern idiom. हमारे पास के वली साहब जाके उनको नॉर्थ इंडियंस को उर्दू सिखा दिए थे, वो डिक्शन बदल दिए थे उन्होंने. मगर हाशमी स्टेट फर्म, ही सेड आई विल नॉट चेंज. भूखा मर गया, खाने को खाना नहीं था, मगर बोला तुझे चाकरी क्या, तू अपनीच बोल, तेरा शेर दक्कनी है, दक्कनीच बोल. नेक्स्ट प्लीज. तो हमारी तरह हम ऐसीच है, हाशमी भी ऐसीच था. नेक्स्ट. शुक्रिया, थैंक यू.